It's time for another ranking. Now that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is out, it's time to rank all 9 Quentin Tarantino movies. Or technically 10, but he counts Kill Bill as one movie. Whatever, moving on. Coming in the number 9 spot is Pulp Fiction. Nah, I'm just kidding. It's death proof. This is easily Quentin's worst movie by a long shot. I don't hate this movie. In fact, I quite like the first half of it with Stuntman Mike at the bar. That actually feels like a movie from the 70s. But the second half just kind of loses me. I don't find it that interesting, and I kind of wish it was a bit more like the first half. It feels like Quentin wanted to make 2 different movies. One about a stuntman who kills people with his car, and another about stunt girls who kick ass. The first half is fun and interesting, but I can't really say that about the second half. And what makes it weirder is that A, this is the same movie, and B, Tarantino knows how to make mundane dialogue interesting. Just look at the Royale with cheese scene in Pulp Fiction. Also, it feels like Quentin just kind of forgot the Stuntman Mike was supposed to exist and put him in at the end. Even though this is my least favorite Tarantino movie, Stuntman Mike is definitely one of my favorite Tarantino characters. Even Quentin himself said this was his worst movie. Anyway, moving on. In the number 8 spot, I have Jackie Brown. Now, this is the only movie by Tarantino that's based off someone else's work, at least until this gets made. Now, I've never read Rum Punch by Elmore Leonard, so I don't know if it's good or not, but this movie isn't that bad. Compared to his previous work, Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, Jackie Brown kind of pales in comparison to those, same with his later movies. The movie does have scenes with characters talking, but they're kind of slow, which makes the movie feel a bit too slow for me. I don't know if that's the book's fault or Quentin's. I don't really have a lot to talk about. It is a good movie, but I'm ready to move on to the next one. At number 7, I have The Hateful Eight. I love The Hateful Eight, and it's probably Tarantino's most underrated movie in my opinion. I recently watched the extended version on Netflix, so that's the one I'll be talking about. For something that's 3.5 hours long, it keeps you hooked even though it takes a long time to get to the whodunit aspect of the movie. I love Major Marcus Warren. He's probably Samuel Jackson's best Tarantino character since Jules. And everyone else is good too. The only issues I really have are that frame in episode 3 of the Netflix version, and the Warren and Mannix hanging Daisy, because if they weren't shot and bleeding out, this would be no problem. In the number 6 spot, I have both Kill Bill Volumes 1 and 2. Both of these movies are absolutely great, but I actually prefer Volume 2 over Volume 1, but I'll get into that later. Volume 1 is probably the best action in any Tarantino movie I've seen. That scene with Beatrix fighting the Crazy 88 is amazing. Uma Thurman is amazing as Beatrix Kiddo in both of these, and is the best Tarantino character she's played. The animation is great too, which is something I never thought I'd say for a Tarantino movie. I prefer Volume 2 over this, mostly for 2 reasons, and I'll give you one of them right now. There were a couple plot holes I found here, which were, how was Beatrix able to get from her room to the parking lot without anyone seeing her? And why is her katana allowed on a plane, especially just a couple of years after 9/11? That's all I could really think of. Now let's talk about Volume 2. The main reason I prefer this one is that it feels more like a Tarantino movie than Volume 1 did. I really cannot think of anything wrong with Volume 2. That Superman speech delivered by Bill is amazing and one of the best things Tarantino has ever written. Now let's get on with the rest of the list. Okay, so we're finally in the top 5. Number 5 is Django Unchained. Is this technically a Southern rather than a Western, because most of the movie is set in the South rather than the West? This movie is awesome. Jamie Foxx as Django is badass, Christoph Waltz as Dr. Schultz is amazing, Leonardo DiCaprio is a great villain, and the only character Quentin created that he truly despises, which is very understandable. This is the only movie in existence I could think of that has both rap and country on the same soundtrack and still work. Comedy is good too. It even makes clan hoods funny, which is something I never thought I'd ever say. At number 4 is Inglourious Basterds. After Death Proof was, Quentin totally made up for himself with Inglourious Bastards. This is definitely one of the best Tarantino movies and has the best opening scene in any of his movies. That opening is amazing. Hans Landa is one of the best characters Tarantino has ever created, and Christoph Waltz plays him amazingly. The actors who play the bastards are great too, like Brad Pitt as Aldo Rain. And yes, that is Ryan from The Office in this movie. That ending is great. Both Hitler and Landa get what they deserve. It's about just as satisfying as the ending for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Speaking of which, number 3 is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I already did a review of this, so go watch that if you want my opinion. At number 2, I have Reservoir Dogs, Quentin Tarantino's first ever movie, and it's a great one. I love the fact that they never actually show the heist, which is before and after. That's just really creative. Also, that ear torture scene. The characters are all really good. Well, bad technically since they're diamond store robbers, but they're well written and acted. I think one reason this is so high on the list probably has to do with this being the first film by Tarantino I ever saw. But yeah, Reservoir Dogs is amazing. I'm sure this isn't a surprise to anyone, but coming in first place is Pulp Fiction. I love Pulp Fiction, and pretty much everyone else does too. This is one of my top 5 favorite movies ever made, and I really can't think of anything to say that hasn't already been said about Pulp Fiction. I can't even think of a way to summarize Pulp Fiction. I love this movie, and if you don't like it, well, something's wrong with you. Nah, I'm just kidding, but seriously. Well, that was all of Quentin Tarantino's movies. Hope you enjoyed and subscribe for more videos. I also have my gaming channel linked in the description, along with all my social medias, so you can check those out if you want.